Next on Chicago's very own WGN News.
A jury makes a decision on the fate of a teenager charged in connection with murdering another child. I'm Dina Baer. I'll have the long-awaited verdict in the Yummy Sandifer trial.
And a weekend cold snap sends temperatures way below normal. But Tom Skilling says don't write the weekend off just yet. Plus, the Bulls are back. We're live from the big season opener. WGN News at 9 is next.
Out at 6 on WGN Channel 9. This is Chicago's very own WGN News at 9.
Good evening, I'm Allison Payne.
And I'm Steve Sanders. It was a murder that focused the nation's attention on the problem of child killers. The execution-style murder of 11-year-old Robert Sandifer. Tonight, a jury has reached its verdict in the trial of one of two brothers accused of that crime. WGN's Dina Baer live tonight at Cook County Criminal Court with the very latest. Dina, good evening.
Good evening, Steve. Jury members deliberated for about 2.5 hours, but by the looks on their faces, it was as if they had been out much longer. Perhaps they were wearing the weight of their decision. They found 16-year-old Derek Hardaway guilty of first-degree murder in connection with the death of 11-year-old Yummy Sandifer 2 years ago.
He was crying. He's a child. He was crying. You saw that. There were tears coming down his cheeks, and he was crying. He killed an 11-year-old child. That's enough said right there. He acted as an adult when he took that life, and he should be punished as an adult.
The most extensive piece of evidence the jury had to consider in deliberations was the 21-page statement of Derek Hardaway, taken just 1 day after the murder, in which he admitted leaders of his gang told him and his brother Craig that Robert Yummy Sandifer had to be killed. Hardaway told police they lured Sandifer to a South Side tunnel. Derek said he stayed in the car and his brother returned after allegedly shooting Sandifer. 11-year-old Sandifer was the suspected triggerman in the death of Siobhan Dean. She was hit by a stray bullet, apparently aimed at someone else. 4 days later, when gang members suspected Yummy might turn in top gang members, the young boy was found in this tunnel, murdered execution style. Tonight, prosecutor John Schmidt told the jury Derek Hardaway had to pay for that crime, even though he was not the one who shot the boy. He points out Derek admitted his involvement in the crime, but defense attorney Thomas Garrity insists that admission was coerced after 16 hours in custody where Derek had no juvenile representative, parent, or attorney to inform him of his rights. But the statement remained the strongest piece of evidence against him as prosecutors charged Derek Hardaway as an adult. And Derek Hardaway now faces 20 to 100 years in prison. Sentencing will likely be in about 30 days, but his attorney says he definitely plans an appeal. We should tell you the trial for Derek's brother Craig will begin as soon as a jury is in place. Jury selection should start on Monday, but it may take a little more time because of the publicity surrounding this verdict. It may take some time to get 12 members of a jury that are impartial. Now, the Hardaway family, both parents were here tonight, visibly shaken, but they did not want to talk, understandably, because their youngest son was just found guilty of first-degree murder. Live at 26 in California, Dina Baer, WGN News.
Dina, what about Yummy Sandifer's family? Were they there?
Yummy's grandmother was here, and as you may recall from 2 years ago, she was very outspoken about this case. She let out a little cheer when the verdict was read, but did not want to talk to us about it as she left the courtroom tonight.
Thank you very much for that report.
Republican Senate candidate Al Salvi is doing some political backpedaling tonight over remarks he made on gun control.
Salvi accused former Reagan press secretary and gunshot victim Jim Brady of selling machine guns. Now, that is a charge Brady is angrily denying. WGN's Mary Dixon joins us tonight with the very latest. Mary?
Al Salvi said Jim Brady sold machine guns before he was wounded during the 1981 attempted assassination of Brady's boss, Ronald Reagan. Now, Salvi is taking it back. Is this a case of mistaken identity or of hoof and mouth disease? You be the judge.
I misspoke. I was wrong.
Salvi was talking gun control, a hot topic between him and his Democratic opponent, Dick Durbin. While taping a radio news show yesterday, the Republican nominee had this to say about Jim Brady.
I support a ban on all machine guns and automatic weapons, the type of firearms that Jim Brady himself used to sell.
And Salvi repeated the claim to a Daily Herald reporter this week. It prompted Jim Brady to fly through O'Hare International today with a letter to Salvi.
You are obviously confused. As a former press secretary, I've been accused of shooting my mouth off, but never with a machine gun.
Though James Brady worked for Republicans, these days he often campaigns for Democrats, including Dick Durbin.
He's a class individual who would not stoop to barnyard, what it is animals do on the barnyard.
Now it's Al Salvi who's red-faced.
I was under a false understanding. I made a mistake.
Jim Brady has accepted Salvi's apology. Dick Durbin is campaigning downstate today, and he says this flap calls into question Salvi's judgment. The man who filled the Senate seat under contest, Paul Simon, is also criticizing Salvi. He's saying that a senator ought to know the facts before he speaks.
Still, it is kind of a mystery as to how he could say something like that, isn't it?
Supposedly, someone on the Salvi campaign or a friend of Salvi's told him that Jim Brady had been a gun dealer, and then it turns out that it was another Jim Brady.
Okay. Thank you.
Very misinformed.
Well, the race for Congress in the 9th Congressional District has been a sleeper for the last 46 years, but this year, longtime Congressman Sidney Yates is getting a wake-up call. It is one that could cut short his chance at a lifetime record in Washington.
The Gingrich control.
He's been in Congress for nearly a half-century, so long that with one more year in Washington, he'll become history's longest-serving congressman. But this man hopes Sidney Yates never reaches that historic milestone. Joe Walsh is a 35-year-old teacher and researcher who feels his 87-year-old opponent has become too comfortable in Washington and uncomfortable in his own district.
This is a district that hasn't had a full-time campaign, a full-time candidate in probably 14 years.
In a somewhat humorous campaign, Joe Walsh went in search of Sidney Yates, even offering $1,000 to the first person who spotted him. Now he's offering $50,000 in pledges to a charity if Yates will agree to a debate. So far, the answer is no. But Walsh says he has made progress by drawing Yates back to Chicago to actively campaign.
He did come home, and that's a huge step. For him, that's a big step. And he's begun to campaign a little bit because I think things have tightened up.
But Congressman Yates says here or not, he's been in touch with the voters in his district and has always fought for their needs in Washington, even giving them a voice from all those miles away.
I send questionnaires to every family in the district twice a year, asking for their views on important issues pending before the Congress.
And Yates says his experience opens doors for him, where his opponent would be stonewalled.
I have the experience. I have the relationships with members of the House, both Democrats and Republicans.
But Walsh says he offers more passion. So what do voters want?
I go more for passion.
Somebody with experience, somebody that has more experience, I guess, older.
Well, and I have to go with the person with the experience.
The district stretching from Chicago's lakefront at Diversey up through Skokie, Niles, and Evanston is predominantly Democratic. While Walsh considers himself a liberal on social issues, he's a fiscal conservative, and therein lies the difference. Walsh is for school vouchers, abortion rights, immigration reform, and a balanced budget. Yates is a supporter of the arts and environment, who fought to protect Medicare and Social Security. Well, Sidney Yates has beaten his last two opponents nearly 2-1, but there may be a difference this time. Republicans could smell an upset, and in these final days of the campaign, they have sent $70,000 to the Walsh campaign. Allison.
Election officials are hoping Tuesday's vote will be the most accurate ever. They've removed more than 340,000 names from voter rolls. They were either duplicates or people who moved, died, or changed their names. And they are also urging voters to be prepared when they go to the polls.
So we always recommend that everybody bring some identification to the polling place, so in case you encounter a problem, you can prove who you are.
If you live in Chicago and have questions about voting procedures or your polling place, you can call the Board of Election Commissioners at area code 312-269-7900. If you live in suburban Cook County and have voting questions, you can call the Cook County Clerk's Office at area code 312-443-5150. If you live outside of Cook County, you can simply call your local county clerk's office for voting information. And we invite you to make WGN News your choice for complete election coverage on Tuesday, November 5th. We'll have an expanded edition of WGN News at 9 with our election special beginning at 10 o'clock. We'll have live coverage and analysis of the local races you care about most to the latest on the presidential race. So make WGN News your choice election night.
Some other news tonight. Doctors at Children's Memorial Hospital are treating a 3-year-old girl, Highland Park girl, suffering from E. coli poisoning. Health officials say the girl had recently visited the Seattle area. 15 cases of E. coli contamination have been found there. Most are linked to Odwalla beverages containing apple juice. More than 40 confirmed or suspected cases have been reported in Washington, California, and Colorado this week. All Odwalla fruit juices have been pulled from stores nationwide.
A key find today in the deadly jet crash near the Milwaukee airport. Investigators have recovered the flight voice recorder. Tonight, it's being examined in labs in Washington, D.C. But while local investigators search for a cause at the northwest suburban Wheeling crash site, some residents are searching for a new place to live. WGN's Randy Salerno has that story.
The final pieces of the ill-fated jet are removed from the parking lot at the Foxborough Apartments. The cockpit is the largest, but the voice recorder may be the most important. Searchers finally found it in the creek bed. The takeoff ended in a ball of fire and smoke. Now a truck hauls the final pieces back to the airport. Flowers mark the spot where 3 days later the stench of jet fuel still hangs in the air. This is where the plane came to rest. It is just 15 feet away from a bedroom right there, where a mother and her young daughter were watching television.
I was scared.
5-year-old Amanda Boyden and her mother Amy will never forget Wednesday afternoon.
It was devastating, and my daughter doesn't want to live here anymore, and if it would have hit, we would have been dead.
The plane is no longer near Amanda's bedroom. The parts, thousands of parts, are arranged inside a Milwaukee airport hangar. An upside-down tail, twisted and charred pieces of fuselage, tangled balls of wire. The flaps from both wings found near the runway are the only things not touched by fire. Their role in the crash, though, has yet to be determined.
It's going to be a very methodical, step-by-step approach, and this is one of those steps that we're in. Mocking up the aircraft, looking at the different parts of the aircraft and seeing what they tell us.
The answers are most likely weeks or months away. The Boyden's lease expires next April.
I wanted to move.
Why do you want to move?
Because the plane.
In Wheeling, Randy Salerno, WGN News.
The Milwaukee runway reopened this afternoon for the first time since Wednesday's crash. And still no word tonight on what caused yesterday's deadly plane crash in Brazil, but investigators have found nearly 9 pounds of cocaine in the debris. The plane slammed into a residential area shortly after takeoff yesterday morning. 101 people were killed, including 5 people on the ground. The cocaine was in packages found near part of the landing gear. Investigators are still trying to determine where those drugs came from.
And other news, the world champion Chicago Bulls were the last team to finish the NBA season last year, so how appropriate that they are the first team to begin the season this year.
But are they picking up where they left off? Dan Roan joins us now with highlights. Hope they are good ones.
Yep, first team to tip off in Boston at a 6 o'clock tip tonight.
They should be.
As they should, you're right, and the drive for 5 is underway. The Bulls rocking down the road toward what they hope will be a 5th NBA title. It started well tonight in Boston, though it took the Bulls a while to get their engines revved up. Boston scored 16 in a row in the second quarter. Dana Barrow's killing them. They led by 16, but the Bulls come back and catch up in the third. Tony Kukoc, a big game off the bench inside, double pumping the foul by Ellison. Bulls got the lead after 3, and they pull away in the fourth. Michael led 4 Chicago players in double figures with 30, including those 2 right there. And late in the game, inbounds play from Tony to Scottie Pippen. The Bulls make up 22 in the second half and win it by 9. 107-98. More highlights and Rich King live from the Fleet Center coming up in sports.
We'll see you then.
Okay.
Thanks,
Give me
Dan.
5.
Right. Question, is ComEd doing its job? Coming up, sparks fly as Mayor Daley takes on the electric company.
O.J. Simpson's lawyers come up with a new theory of what might have happened the night Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman were killed.
They are supposed to save your life. But now, even car companies admits airbags can be deadly. Find out what they're going to do about it.
And by now, you've carved it, toasted its seeds, and made sweet treats from it. But there's another use for pumpkins that may surprise you.
And I'm Tom Skilling in the weather office. Another cold night, and that cold air just keeps on coming. But for how long? There are some changes ahead, but we'll tell you when they arrive later on, so stay with us.
You're watching Chicago's very own WGN News with Allison Payne, Steve Sanders, Tom Skilling, and Rich King. This is WGN News at 9.
With Ultra Strength and Gay.
In Decision 96, Bob Dole has begun a non-stop campaign marathon that will last until Election Day. Dole is trying to close the gap in polls that show him trailing the president. WGN's Gary Nuremberg has more.
Campaigning with former Republican Presidents Bush and Ford, Bob Dole began his 96-hour marathon with a reference to the president who was forced to resign in disgrace because of campaign illegalities and the resulting cover-up.
And President Ford stood here. He came in to pick up the pieces after Watergate. He understood that our party, the wreckage was strewn all across America.
The reference to Watergate follows continued Republican attacks on the president's campaign fundraising.
We cannot afford 4 more years of broken promises and a new ethical scandal every week.
President Clinton tried to rebut criticism of Democratic fundraising by blaming Dole for killing campaign finance reform.
Campaign finance reform has come before the Congress 6 Congresses in a row, and my opponent filibustered it 5 times. He blocked the last one right before he left office.
Dole and his party chairman were not letting Clinton have the last word, especially when the president said, quote, "We have played by the rules."
Who does he think he's fooling? Is he so arrogant he thinks the people can't see through that bald-faced lie?
Neither Clinton nor Dole has been found guilty of violating any campaign finance law, and Each Man Friday called for finance reform. This is not an issue that has traditionally been the focus of the final days of a presidential campaign, but other attacks have not worked for Dole, and still trailing in the polls, he is hoping it will be the issue that helps him narrow Clinton's lead. Gary Nuremberg, WGN News.
Bob Dole will campaign in Indianapolis on Saturday. His 4-day campaign blitz will take him through more than a dozen states.
Allison, Commonwealth Edison is defending itself tonight against city charges it isn't doing its job. The broadside coming direct from the 5th floor at City Hall. Mayor Daley today announced he is seeking arbitration in negotiations with ComEd. He says the utility isn't living up to its agreement to provide reliable service to consumers.
In its franchise agreement with the City of Chicago, Commonwealth Edison committed to provide reliable electric service to the people and the businesses of our city. We believe that Commonwealth Edison has failed to live up to its commitment.
We welcome the opportunity to present our position to an adjustment board because we believe that after we have put forward our position and the facts about our compliance with the franchise, that they will also concur that Commonwealth Edison is in full compliance with the city franchise agreement.
Commonwealth Edison's franchise agreement calls for $1 million worth of improvements. The mayor says the utility is not spending that money up front and is falling behind in modernizing equipment. A WGN Chicago reporter investigation aired almost 4 months ago showed ComEd downsizing its original plans for improvements. The arbitration board that is chosen to hear this case will make a final decision.
Fighting constant pain and fatigue, Cardinal Bernadine has given up day-to-day control of the Chicago Archdiocese. The spiritual leader of Chicago's 2.3 million Catholics has been battling pancreatic cancer for 16 months. The disease has spread to his liver. Bishop Raymond Gettert will take over the Cardinal's responsibilities. Gettert has been an auxiliary bishop since 1991. Steve?
Meanwhile, at the Vatican, Pope John Paul II celebrated the 50th anniversary of his ordination today with a Mass. The head of the Roman Catholic Church made his longest public appearance since his surgery last month. The 76-year-old pontiff appeared in good health during the Mass in St. Peter's Basilica. The Mass was part of 10 days of events to mark John Paul's golden anniversary.
And WGN's live lottery drawing is next.